Okay, so I think we're on air. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Webber. I am a Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham and the current Chair of the British International Studies Association. On Friday, January the 29th, I was the academic lead for the BISA Foreign Office NATO Model NATO event, which involved 15 universities from across the United Kingdom representing 2 countries each. Therefore, all 30 countries of NATO represented in a crisis simulation, which entailed our student delegates grappling with an earthquake, a major earthquake, and a series of volcanic eruptions in the Black Sea, Eastern Mediterranean region. I'm pleased to say it was only a simulation. It wasn't something. I'm pleased to say also that the students managed across a long day of negotiation to come to a final position, an agreed position on the model on how to respond to the crisis. So to reflect on the day's events, I'm joined by 3 of the participants. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves in a moment. If you don't mind, what I'd quite like you to do is if you could say who you are, where you're studying, and which country you represented in the model. So Anna, if I could start with you.
So my name is Anna. I'm the final year student at Newcastle University. I study politics and languages. And during the Model NATO, I was representing Montenegro.
Thank you. Nessie?
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I'm from the University of Westminster. And during the simulation, I represented Canada.
Thank you. Megan?
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm from the University of King's College London, and I'm doing the MA on National Security Studies. And in the Model NATO, I represented Romania.
Excellent. Okay, maybe if I could start with Anna then. Could you tell us briefly why it was you decided to take part in Model NATO?
I just thought I always, before I participated in European Youth Parliament and United Nations models. And I just thought it would be something interesting because I haven't tried the Model NATO before. So yeah, and it turned out to be a very interesting experience.
Good. Vanessa, why did you decide to take part?
I think I wanted to learn more about like the negotiation element of it and just working with other people in an intense situation like that. I hadn't done anything like it, so.
No, sure. Megan, and you?
I had never done anything like it before either, and I was keen to learn a bit more about what it would be like to be like diplomats for a day. I'm also very interested in NATO in particular, so it really appealed to me to learn more about how this particular organization worked. So that's why. Okay.
So looking back, Megan, if I could now start with you and go in reverse order. Megan, what is the best thing about participating in the model?
Well, the best thing was definitely getting to represent a country and be diplomats for a day. That's why I joined this. So it was really, really exciting. I was also excited to see how NATO works and in such an immersive way, which was completely different from like reading about it. It was really fun and exciting, and it was challenging at the same time to like respond to a crisis of such a scale. So I really loved being diplomats for a day. Yeah.
Excellent. We'll come back to the challenges in a second. So the best thing was putting yourself in the place of a diplomat.
Mm-hmm.
So was that also the experience for you? What was the best takeaway from your involvement?
I'm sorry, from my involvement?
No, moving on to Vanessa, what was the best thing from your point of view?
Oh, okay. So I think just seeing like the format of how a NATO summit kind of operates, like from the backside of it. I've mostly done work like on the ground, so it was really interesting to kind of see how everything comes together like behind the scenes. I love the way that everyone was able to collaborate with each other, and just to see how cooperation can actually happen between multiple countries.
Yeah. Anna, and from your point of view, what was the the most encouraging thing from your involvement?
So I think it was a great opportunity to kind of learn more about the country we're supposed to represent. And I think it was also a great way to learn how NATO deals with crisis situations and how the delegates from different countries need to collaborate between each other to reach a common solution, because everybody has to agree on that, which isn't simple. And I just think it was a great experience, yeah.
So I'm now going to flip the question. So what was the most challenging thing? And in a moment, I'll start with you, Vanessa, if that's okay. Now you can answer this question either in terms of the substance of the crisis you had to deal with, or whether there were any particular challenges to do with doing it on Zoom, or your preparation, getting the feel for the country you were representing. There may be other things indeed that you found a challenge. And of course, you overcame the challenges, so it was overall a success. But I'd be interested to know what some of those challenges were as you participated in the model and as you prepared for it. So Vanessa, you first.
I think in like the breakout groups, when we were like negotiating aside from the main kind of meeting, just remaining like diplomatic and like remembering what the common cause is for what we're trying to seek here. Because obviously, like having done the research and behind representing Canada and like knowing what your stance is supposed to be and like sticking to that as opposed to what you might think, or and then like how you handle other countries that maybe you don't agree with, or remaining diplomatic, I think was not hard, but it was the challenge for me.
Okay, so staying in role
exactly
perhaps was a challenge. I mean, arguably, being Canada is maybe a little more straightforward than, I don't know, being North Macedonia. Against North Macedonia, but it's a country students would know less about, whereas preparing to be Canada or the UK or the US, or indeed the country from which you where you were born, may have also been a bit more straightforward. So the fact that NATO is 30 countries, for some delegations, that would have been quite a steep learning curve, I imagine. Anna, if I could turn to you, what for you was one of the major challenges of Model NATO?
So I completely agree with Vanessa that it was a challenge to stay diplomatic and to focus on the role of representing the country and not your own views. What I also think was challenging, for example, rising support for your proposal, because you had to argument it well and make sure that everybody understands what they're signing for, I would say. And also kind of discussing your ideas in the breakout rooms, because obviously different countries had different priorities. For example, some feared Russia, some concentrated 100% on the crisis. And yeah, I think it was a lot of things to discuss, basically. And it was a challenge to remember, like, what is your point of view and what you need to put through, I would say.
Yeah. Megan, was that your experience also, staying in role and to negotiate? Were those challenging things?
Yeah, to an extent it was, yeah, definitely. But I would say that the most challenging thing for me was definitely preparing for it, because I had no idea what to expect, because I had never participated in anything like this before. And I was nervous about not being sufficiently prepared to represent my country well, as Vanessa said before. Having to represent my country's interests as well as like over my own was actually quite challenging. And I was really nervous when preparing for it. Also, another challenge that I encountered was the online format in terms of preparing and during the event, because I couldn't really communicate with my partner. We were part of a double delegation, so it wasn't as any like normal year. It applied to before and during the event. It was really challenging to prepare and act as a joint delegation when we weren't even able to meet in person. Yeah.
Can I just follow up on that then? So as a double delegation, your fellow delegate was contactable during the model online, presumably. but obviously you weren't sharing the same physical space. Were you able to maintain communication with your opposite, your partner during the model?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Were you able to keep in contact with your?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was able. It just wasn't really comfortable, and so we did it all through text. So I was texting him, and he obviously maybe he was dealing with something different, and I couldn't get the answer immediately like I would if we were in person. So I had to wait for it, and then I had another person waiting for my answer, and I had to consult with my partner first. So it was a bit stressful in that sense. You know, I could communicate with them, and we made all decisions jointly as we should have, I think. But it was more challenging than it would have been in person. So that's something that I really didn't like about this online format. It was just difficult, but it was, I mean, it went really well considering everything. So
let me ask you a final question, if I can start with Vanessa first. So if you were to repeat this sort of event in years to come, either professionally or in business or whatever. I mean, do you think some of the skills you may have learnt in Model NATO are applicable elsewhere, of negotiation and working in groups and so on? Was there anything beneficial beyond learning about your particular country or about NATO?
Definitely. I think for me, firstly, I didn't have the same experience as Anna. I was also in a double delegation, and my partner was great. We didn't have much communication before. We were both very nervous, but he was also at my university and he was also on my course. So I did know who he was from like a distance. But on the day, he was like phenomenal. We were both very much in contact. I think we had really good like partnership and were able to collaborate together really well. So that's definitely a transferable skill, just knowing how to work with people in the future. And he also had very differing views to me. So we were able to find the common ground in that, which I think is very important when dealing with like negotiations and things. But I also think for me, the main thing was it really made me think outside the box in ways that we would maybe like our approach to the crisis and how we were going to handle the situation, even thinking about what Canada could offer when like other countries like nearby, perhaps the Caribbean was going to be hit. So like how Canada could come forwards and like step up in that situation.
Yeah.
So definitely both of those things are transferable skills. I think in any career path you can apply.
Yeah. Anna, how about you? Let me spin the question slightly differently. Being involved in negotiation in this way, has it sort of increased your interest maybe in a career in diplomacy or foreign service or something, or not at all?
Definitely. Actually, after the Model NATO, I watched some videos about NATO and read some stuff about it as well, because it got me interested in the topic. And also, I think learning how to put your point through, like communication with other people, and also analyzing what's happening, because you are planning your own idea how to solve the problem, but then you have to acknowledge what is happening, what others are planning, whether it was already mentioned or not. So I think it was very challenging, but yeah, as Vanessa said, it made you think outside the box. And so I think I've learned a lot as well.
Yeah. So in 12 months' time, let's hope we are able to repeat it, but on this occasion in London, in the Foreign Office building, how might you do things differently, do you think, if you were doing it in person rather than online? What do you think? How do you think the dynamic might be different? Would you enjoy it more if it was person to person rather than online? I'll just open that up to anyone who may have a view.
I think it would be easier to make connections with people, because it wasn't really possible to kind of talk to a person, kind of make a like real connection, I would say, because in the real life we would have coffee breaks and things like that. And I think, yeah, it's still, I kind of missed this little thing about the online, because Zoom wasn't able to kind of make up for that, I think.
True. No, Megan.
I agree with that, and also I think it would have been a lot more immersive if it was in person. As I said before, I really enjoyed being a diplomat for a day, but I think if I were actually at the Foreign Office, I would have definitely felt like a diplomat. So I think that would have made a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Vanessa, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just think also like even being in character, so as Canadians, for example, going into it knowing who your allies were. So for us, the US, it could have been a different experience had we spent more time like with our actual allies, like on the day, even in breaks and stuff, to have that real like bond and connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice way to finish. The real world of diplomacy during the pandemic has largely shifted online, as well as the model event which we ran. And one of the challenges is to retain those relationships of trust and social bonding and so on, which you referred to. But we are where we are. In the meantime, the online activities continue. My final thought would be, I also regard it as a great success, and my fervent hope is sometime later this year or early next, we will repeat it, and we will be back doing it in person with all the advantages that brings.